This video is a brief description of proportional assist ventilation. Now, proportional assist ventilation is a mode of ventilation that uses a servo targeting scheme. And examples of modes that are proportional assist are the PAV Plus, and this is on 840 ventilators and 980 ventilators, and PPS, this is proportional pressure support on Draeger ventilators. As stated, proportional assist ventilation uses a servo targeting scheme, and this scheme is based on the equation of motion for the respiratory system in the form of the following equation. The first component, pressure equals. This is the inspiratory pressure that is generated by the machine and is relative to the in-expiratory pressure as a function of time. So this is what the ventilator is giving to the patient. This is equal to K1 is the volume assist, or the elastic load generated by the patient. Now this is multiplied by the volume generated over time. So this is an error, this little dot here, we're just going to scratch it out. So this component is the elastic component of work of breathing, plus K2, and K2 is the resistive load or resistance. And this is multiplied by flow, and this dot was correct over here over time. So that V is for flow over time. Values K1 and K2, these are values that are actually operator set. The operator sets on the ventilator, or the ventilator kind of sets it behind the scenes in the background. And my volume, V, and this V with the dot, and flow, these are generated by the patient's inspiratory effort. So I'm just going to put patient here. And this slide's getting a little too messy, but I'll further explain it in slides to follow. This picture shows the settings for Draeger's proportional pressure support, PPS, their version of proportional assist ventilation. And as you see, I have a setting for my volume assist, and this would be my K1, and my flow assist, which is my K2. Now my ventilator is going to monitor from the patient. It's going to monitor either a compliance or elastance, and that's for my volume assist, and it's also going to monitor my patient's resistance. And this varies on the patient's inspiratory drive. Then what happens is the ventilator will give a certain amount of inspiratory pressure based on what percentages I set for my two values of my volume assist and my flow assist. This is a ventilator screenshot of proportional assist ventilation, and I'm just going to highlight the settings that are relative to the mode itself. But the main importance is this percent support button. I'm going to highlight in yellow. That's pretty much the only setting you set with PAV Plus, which is much different than proportional pressure support. So by setting a percent support, this is turning the mode into an amplifier, or how much you want to amplify the patient's effort, or how much you want to support them. So it's not like that if you set 75% that the patient is doing only 25% of the work and the ventilator is doing 75%. It's that amplification value. As mentioned before, the volume and the flow are always generated by the patient's inspiratory effort. And because of this, it's created by the patient's diaphragm or muscle pressure. So we can think of P muscle. And the pressure that's actually generated by the ventilator itself is an amplifier of the muscle pressure. Now, the ventilator is always monitoring the work related to the patient's compliance, the volume load, and resistance. And by setting the persistent support, we're telling how much pressure to deliver, or basically how much to overcome or how much to amplify. So the 75% is actually amplification of 4 to 1. Now if I change my percent to 50%, that's an amplification of 2 to 1. Now this is another screenshot of the Hertz minute 840 and PAV Plus, and we can see a lot of monitored values from this screen. So what we see here is that the actual patient's measured compliance. So this is the volume that the ventilator's got to overcome, and the resistance here. So the machine's always evaluating the compliance and resistance, and based on whatever support value I have, say I have it set at 50%, that it's going to give me pressure to overcome these values based on the patient's inspiratory drive. So if we look at the waveforms here, this top portion is my pressure graph, and my bottom portion is the patient's flow rate. And as you notice, each breath is different because the patient's drive is different with each breath. So I'll have different amount of pressure with each breath. So as you notice, say this first breath here, here's my inspiratory flow rate that creates a certain amount of resistance. It creates a certain amount of work also in relation to my compliance or elastance, and it's giving me a corresponding pressure to overcome that. And as you see, the next breath is different, so it's giving me a little higher pressure. So proportional assist is a very responsive mode, and it's great for flow synchrony. So this is a brief description of proportional assist ventilation. Thank you.